Hello everyone, welcome to Stoic Dialogue, ancient philosophy for the modern mind, where we transform philosophy into deep dialogues that can change your life. You know, it's amazing how the wisdom of the ancient Stoics can still resonate so deeply in our modern world. And today we're going to dive into one of the most pervasive challenges we all face: distraction.
It's almost as if we're living in an age of distraction, isn't it? We're constantly bombarded with information, notifications, and demands on our attention. It can feel overwhelming at times.
Absolutely. It's like we're constantly being pulled in a million different directions. So how can we, as modern Stoics, navigate this sea of distractions and reclaim our focus? Let's explore that together.
Well, I think it's helpful to start with a quote from Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers. He said, "No wind is favorable for one who does not know where they are going." What's fascinating about this quote is that it highlights the importance of intentionality in combating distractions.
You're right. Having a clear sense of purpose, knowing where you want to go, can act like a compass guiding you through those stormy seas of distraction. Right. But how do we actually apply that wisdom in our daily lives?
One of the most practical strategies the Stoics offer is the idea of creating a distraction-free environment. Think about Anna, the graphic designer we discussed earlier. She found herself constantly interrupted by emails, notifications, and the general digital clutter of modern life.
And this was impacting her work, right? She was finding it difficult to focus and be productive.
Exactly. She realized that to do her best work, to truly tap into her creative potential, she needed to minimize those external distractions. So she took some deliberate steps. She turned off non-essential notifications, scheduled specific times for checking emails, and even used noise-canceling headphones to create a sort of mental bubble. She even put up a deep work in progress sign on her door.
It sounds like she was really intentional about designing her environment to support her focus, but did it actually work? I mean, is it really that simple?
It might seem simple, but it can be incredibly effective, you see. By minimizing those external distractions, Anna was able to create the mental space she needed to concentrate on her work, and the results were tangible. She noticed a significant improvement in her productivity and felt a greater sense of satisfaction at the end of the day.
So it's not just about willpower then, it's about recognizing that our environment plays a huge role in shaping our ability to focus. But what about those of us who can't always control our surroundings? What if we work in a busy office or have a family at home? Are we destined to be distracted?
Not at all. Remember, Stoicism is all about focusing on what we can control. And while we may not always be able to control our external environment, we can control how we respond to it. And that leads us to another powerful Stoic strategy, one that's particularly relevant in today's world: the Pomodoro Technique.
Yes, the Pomodoro Technique. Now, I've heard of this, but I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical. Tell me, how can something as simple as a timer actually help us overcome distractions?
Well, maybe it's not just about the timer itself. It's about the principle behind it. The Pomodoro Technique encourages us to work in focused bursts of 25 minutes, followed by a short 5-minute break. And this, I think, is where the genius of the technique lies. It recognizes that our attention spans are not infinite.
You mean, instead of trying to force ourselves to focus for hours on end, we're working with our natural rhythms of attention and rest.
Precisely. By breaking our work into manageable chunks and incorporating regular breaks, we're actually training our minds to focus more intensely. And those short breaks, those moments of stepping away from the task at hand, are crucial. They allow our minds to rest and recharge, preventing burnout, and actually enhancing our overall productivity.
That's really interesting. It reminds me of how athletes train. They don't just run constantly. They have intervals of high intensity followed by periods of rest and recovery. And that's how they build strength and endurance.
That's a great analogy. The Pomodoro Technique is like interval training for the mind. And, this idea of working in focused bursts isn't new. In fact, it has some interesting historical parallels. Consider Anthony Trollope, one of the most prolific authors of the 19th century. He followed a very disciplined writing schedule, setting a timer for 15 minutes and aiming to write a certain number of words within that time frame.
So he was basically using an early form of the Pomodoro Technique.
In a way, yes. And his incredible output, his ability to consistently produce high-quality work, speaks to the effectiveness of this approach. It's a testament to the power of working with, rather than against, our natural rhythms of attention and focus. But the Pomodoro Technique, even with its historical parallels and effectiveness, is just one tool in the Stoic arsenal for combating distraction. There's another aspect we need to consider, and that is our mental diet.
Mental diet. Now, that's a term I haven't heard before. Tell me more about that. What does it mean to cultivate a mental diet?
Well, Just as we nourish our bodies with the food we eat, we nourish our minds with the information we consume. And in today's world, that information comes at us from all directions at an overwhelming pace. The constant stream of news, social media updates, and notifications can leave us feeling mentally exhausted and scattered. Think about it. How do you feel after spending an hour scrolling through social media? Do you feel energized and focused, or drained and a little bit empty?
Honestly, I think most of the time I end up feeling more drained than inspired. It's like I'm filling my mind with junk food instead of nourishing it with something substantial.
That's a great way to put it, and that's precisely what the Stoics were getting at with the idea of a mental diet. They understood that the information we consume has a profound impact on our thoughts, our emotions, and ultimately, our ability to focus and live a fulfilling life.
So what you're saying is that by being more mindful of the information we consume, by choosing to focus on content that uplifts and inspires us, we're essentially strengthening our mental resilience, our ability to resist those tempting distractions that pull us away from what truly matters.
Exactly. You'll find the Stoics believed that our minds are like gardens. If we plant seeds of negativity, worry, and fear, that's what will grow. But if we cultivate a mental environment filled with wisdom, positivity, and purpose, that's what will flourish.
It's like weeding out the mental clutter to make space for something more beautiful and meaningful to grow. That's a really powerful image. But in practical terms, what does it actually look like to cultivate a healthy mental diet?
Well, it starts with being more aware of what we're feeding our minds on a daily basis. Ask yourself, is the news you're consuming adding value to your life? Or is it just fueling anxiety and fear? Are those hours spent scrolling through social media truly enriching your life? Or are they leaving you feeling drained and inadequate?
I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of being sucked into the vortex of social media, only to emerge feeling worse than before. It's like we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, craving validation, and never quite feeling good enough.
And that's precisely the kind of mental clutter that the Stoics encourage us to clear away. Remember, they placed great emphasis on living in accordance with nature, and that includes recognizing our own human nature, our tendency to be swayed by external influences, both positive and negative.
So, by consciously choosing to consume information that aligns with our values, that inspires and uplifts us, we're essentially reinforcing those positive thought patterns and strengthening our ability to resist the negative ones. It's like building up our mental immunity to the toxins of the digital world.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not about becoming a hermit and avoiding all forms of media and technology. It's about finding a balance. It's about being intentional about what we choose to let into our minds. Just like we choose to eat healthy foods to nourish our bodies, we can choose to consume information that nourishes our minds.
I'm starting to see how all these Stoic strategies are interconnected, creating a distraction-free environment, using the Pomodoro Technique, being mindful of our mental diet. They all work together to help us cultivate a state of inner peace and focus.
Precisely. And that brings us to the fourth, and perhaps most fundamental, Stoic strategy for overcoming distractions, recognizing the preciousness of time.
Ah, time. That ever-elusive, constantly slipping away resource. I have a feeling Seneca had something to say about this, didn't he?
He did indeed. Seneca famously said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested."
That's a powerful reminder. It's not about how much time we have. It's about how we choose to use it. And yet, it's so easy to fall into the trap of wasting time on things that don't truly matter to us. We get caught up in the busyness of life, the endless to-do lists, the constant stream of distractions, and before we know it, the day is gone.
It's a common experience in our modern world. We're constantly bombarded with demands on our time, and it can feel like we're always playing catch-up. But the Stoics offer us a different perspective. They viewed time as our most precious resource, something to be guarded and used wisely.
So how do we apply this Stoic wisdom to our own lives? How do we make sure we're not squandering this precious gift of time?
Well, it starts with recognizing that we have a choice. We can choose to let distractions dictate how we spend our time, or we can choose to be more intentional, to focus on what truly aligns with our values and goals.
It's about taking ownership of our time, rather than letting it slip away from us. It's about making conscious choices about how we spend each moment.
Exactly. And this doesn't mean we need to become hyper-productive robots, scheduling every minute of our day. It's more about being mindful of how we spend our time, making conscious choices that align with our priorities.
So it's about quality over quantity when it comes to time.
Precisely. It's about asking ourselves, is this activity truly meaningful to me? Or is this how I want to be spending this precious hour of my life?
Those are great questions to ask ourselves. But in a world that's constantly vying for our attention, how do we actually resist those tempting distractions and stay focused on what truly matters? It's like we're constantly bombarded with notifications, emails, and updates, all vying for a piece of our precious time.
It's certainly a challenge, but one that the Stoics offer some practical guidance on. Remember the importance of intentionality we discussed earlier. Having a clear sense of purpose, knowing your values and what truly matters to you, can act as a powerful anchor in those moments of temptation.
When we're faced with the choice on FEC, to check our phone for the 10th time, or to continue working on that important project, to scroll through social media, or to spend quality time with loved ones, we need to ask ourselves, which action aligns more with my values, with my goals, with the person I want to be?
Exactly. And in those moments, it can be helpful to remember the Stoic practice of visualizing the consequences of our actions. Imagine yourself at the end of the day, looking back on how you spent your time. Will you feel satisfied with how you chose to allocate those precious hours? Or will you be filled with regret for having squandered them on distractions?
That's a really powerful visualization. It's like holding ourselves accountable to our own values and aspirations.
Yeah.
But what about those moments when we do succumb to temptation, when we find ourselves mindlessly scrolling through social media or getting lost in the rabbit hole of the internet? How do we deal with those moments of weakness?
Well, the Stoics wouldn't advocate for beating ourselves up over those lapses, remember. They were proponents of self-compassion and understanding. Instead of dwelling on the past, they encouraged us to focus on the present moment and to use those experiences as opportunities for learning and growth.
So it's about acknowledging our mistakes, learning from them, and then moving forward with renewed intention and focus. It's about recognizing that we're all human, that we all make mistakes, and that those mistakes don't define us.
Exactly. The Stoics believe that true freedom comes not from the absence of temptation, but from our ability to resist it, to choose wisely, and to align our actions with our values. And that's a journey, not a destination. It's a continuous process of self-awareness, self-discipline, and self-improvement.
Sounds like a lot of work, but also incredibly empowering to know that we have the power to choose, to shape our own lives, and to cultivate a state of inner peace and focus amidst the chaos of the modern world.
It is empowering, and it's a journey that's well worth taking. The Stoics offer us a roadmap, a set of tools and practices that have stood the test of time. And by incorporating these principles into our lives, we can not only overcome the challenges of distraction, but also unlock a deeper sense of purpose, fulfillment, and joy.
It really is a powerful reminder that true freedom lies not in the absence of challenges, but in our ability to navigate them with wisdom and resilience. And it seems like the Stoics had a deep understanding of this, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. They recognize that life is full of ups and downs, of distractions and difficulties, but they also believe that we have the power within us to choose how we respond to those challenges, to maintain our inner peace amidst the storms of life.
And that's what's so inspiring about Stoicism, isn't it? It's not about pretending that challenges don't exist. It's about equipping ourselves with the mental tools and practices to face them with courage, wisdom, and grace.
Precisely. And, one of the most powerful tools the Stoics offer for cultivating this inner strength is the practice of reflection.
Reflection. Tell me more about that. What did the Stoics mean by reflection? And how can we incorporate it into our own lives?
Well, the Stoics believed that it wasn't enough to simply experience life. We needed to take the time to process those experiences, to extract the lessons they held, and to use those lessons to guide our future actions. They would often engage in a practice called evening reflection, where they would take some time at the end of the day to review their actions, their thoughts, and their emotions.
It sounds like a sort of mental debriefing.
Yeah.
A chance to step back from the busyness of the day and really examine how we showed up, what we learned, and how we could do better tomorrow.
That's a great way to put it. It's about turning our experiences into wisdom, about using the past to inform the present and to shape the future. You might ask yourself, what went well today? Where did I struggle? What can I learn from my mistakes? What am I grateful for?
It sounds like a simple practice, yet so powerful. It's like taking the time to consciously integrate the lessons of the day, to turn those experiences into valuable insights that can guide our growth and development.
And this practice of reflection is closely tied to another key Stoic principle, focusing on what we can control.
Right. The Stoic dichotomy of control. It's something we've touched on throughout our conversation, but it's such a fundamental concept that it's worth revisiting. Can you remind us what the Stoics meant by this idea of focusing on what we can control?
Of course. The Stoics recognize that much of life is outside of our direct control. We can't control the weather, the traffic, the opinions of others, or even the unexpected twists and turns that life throws our way. But what we can control is our own response to those events, our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions.
So instead of wasting energy worrying the things we can't change, we focus on what we can influence, on how we choose to show up in the world.
Exactly. And you'll find that this principle has profound implications for how we deal with distractions. We may not be able to control the constant stream of notification and demands on our attention, but we can control how we respond to them. We can choose to create boundaries, to establish routines that support our focus, and to cultivate the mental discipline to resist those tempting distractions.
It's like building a muscle. The more we practice focusing our attention, the stronger our mental resilience becomes.
That's a great analogy, and it's important to remember that the Stoics weren't proponents of extreme deprivation or self-denial. They understood the importance of pleasure and enjoyment in life. It wasn't about eliminating all distractions, it was about choosing our distractions consciously, savoring the moments of leisure and enjoyment, while also prioritizing the activities that truly matter to us.
So it's about finding that balance, that sweet spot between discipline and indulgence, between focus and flow. It's about living with intention and awareness, making choices that align with our values and goals, and cultivating a sense of inner peace amidst the inevitable chaos of life.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful note to end our deep dive on. Remember, the Stoic path is a journey, not a destination. It's about continuous self-improvement, about striving to live in accordance with nature, and about finding wisdom and resilience in the face of life's inevitable challenges.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this exploration of Stoic wisdom. It's been a truly enriching experience.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the power to overcome distractions, to cultivate focus, and to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life lies within each of us.
To all of you listening, we encourage you to take some time to reflect on these Stoic principles and consider how you can incorporate them into your own lives. Choose to focus on what truly matters. Resist the pull of distractions and live with greater awareness, intention, and purpose.
Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Stoic Dialogue, ancient philosophy for the modern mind. See you next time.